Hello and welcome to Post-Purchase Success, the podcast from parcelLab, and the place to learn about how retailers and leaders in e-commerce have transformed their experience. I'm your host, Angus Knights. And in today's episode, I had a chance to speak with parcelLab's very own Jana Soppa. Jana is our head of carrier integration here at parcelLab, but before that, she was the returns leader at Decathlon. Now, this discussion is packed full of insights, but in particular, I really enjoyed how we were able to discuss the challenges of scaling logistics in such a fast-growing business like Decathlon. We were able to talk also about the shift in thinking about process to then thinking about experience and really what that means for the customer. And we got some really tactical advice and insight from Jana on exactly how retailers and carriers can actually work together to build lasting partnerships that then create an amazing experience for their customers. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, Jana, and welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Angus. Yeah, thanks for hosting me today.
Absolute pleasure. So we want to dive in and talk a little bit about your journey, because obviously now you're at parcelLab, but we'll also spend some time talking about your time at Decathlon. But where did it kind of all begin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Where to start? I actually did my master's in business administration and economics in Hanover in Germany. But during university, I spent a lot of time in different countries to study and to work. For example, I worked as a tour and travel guide in different European countries. I worked on multiple fairs in different roles. I did 1 year, like the traditional thing people did this time, work and travel in Australia. So it was easy to get a visa. So I did this. I had a lot of different jobs there. It was a lot of fun stuff, but actually in all those different jobs and roles I was in, I kind of discovered my passion for management and leadership. So I found out about, how an organization can be well structured, how it can be not well structured, what's a good leader, what's a not good leader. And I thought, I can jump on this and just try it out. So I decided to start applying for Decathlon. Because next to my passion for traveling, I was always into sports. And I wanted to kind of have a connection with my job, either to travel or to sport. So I ended up in Decathlon 2014. I was moving to Heidelberg, to the logistics. And I started working as a team lead in the e-commerce area, in the logistics really itself. And I was leading a team. They were sending out bulky goods in the e-commerce. So that was quite a challenge. You can imagine many strong guys and me leading this team. So I actually learned a lot. And Decathlon was growing a lot as well. In Germany, they were not really well known during this time. But they were growing 50 to 70% per year in e-commerce.
Wow.
So that's tremendous. And I was actually growing with them. And we started with only 3 teams and we ended up with 12, I think. And I had the opportunity to switch teams because we had to split up and so on, that's the normal thing when you grow. So we were founding new teams and I had the chance to actually play a little bit different roles in being just creative and trying to survive. We could say it like this. So that was super intense. And as we were growing so much, I got a new role for automation of warehousing because at the beginning, you don't buy fancy machines. You just have space and then you think what you're going to do with it. So I got some millions of euros actually to invest in fancy conveyors, in sorting and packing machines and all that cool stuff. So that was, actually 2 years, but different projects inside to build up an automated warehouse for the e-commerce to be more efficient, to have a better quality, to improve in lead times, and also to help the people in the warehouse. So to make it more easy for them to work in all those different processes. And after all this was very intense. You don't work 9 to 5. You don't work Monday to Friday. So you basically work a lot at weird times of the day. I decided, okay, I need to step back a little bit, but I still love the logistics and the e-commerce. So I started being a leader for returns. And out of this, a little bit second use. Because that time, sustainability was already a big factor. And we wanted to make sure to reduce the trash rates and to resell items which are not perfect, but still usable with a reduced price. And we basically needed to find a way, just to sell them in a ideally efficient way and to point out that it's used. I was basically building up this one as well, and I was leading the leaders in the warehouses which were responsible for the operations, and I was responsible for the return policies, and all this administrative things around returns. Are we going to have a label in the box? Do we have the digital return registration? Do we do 60, 90, 180, 365 days return policy? Like all this fun stuff we had to redefine, and especially redefine it due to the beginning of Marketplace. So
wow.
There was a story about Decathlon. Do you want me to continue talking about how I ended up at parcelLab's, or that
I'd love to
doesn't
dig
matter?
in a little bit to some of that stuff in Decathlon. I mean, I think it's probably hard sometimes for someone like me to imagine the change that the business was going through, because when you're in logistics, you're also talking about like physical space, physical processes, number of units that you're shipping. If you're growing at 50%, that is just an enormous like practical and logistical challenge. And also, I guess when talking about some of the return stuff, we've been taught the returns dialogue is, it's kind of been the flavor of the month for the last couple of years now. It's under a lot of scrutiny. But you were having to tackle a lot of these returns topics and define a policy much earlier, before there was that same kind of dialogue, I guess. And as the business was growing rapidly, how did you kind of begin to navigate some of that stuff around returns?
So actually, we had a team for returns from the beginning, because returns, especially in Germany, they are very common. So we are used to do a return. This is very different to other countries. So we compared the return rates within Decathlon, and they are very, very different to each other. So it was always a topic. So even when you only send out 10 parcels, 3 will come back. So we had to find a process from the beginning. But as you can imagine, this was super manual. And during this time, we only had the chance actually to add the label in the box. But this is also a manual process. So when you are growing, you need to avoid manual processes as much as you can. And mechanizing them could be super hard as well, depending on your size as a company. So you always need to think, okay, how can we work with this setup for the next 2 to 3 years? So this was always the scope, to have something working for the next 2 to 3 years, because if you grow so fast, you can't have a vision for 10 years. It's impossible. So you just need to think more short term. And this is what happened with returns. So we were changing basically all the time, depending on the need and the growth, and also the customer service feedback. And we started with the label in the box, had a small team, and then we started building up convoyeurs, a machine to open the boxes instead of having people cutting the boxes open, a machine to compress the boxes instead of having people jumping on them to push them into the trash. We found a more or less good working solution to create a digital returns label. So we tried this and checked with the customer service, okay, how is the response there? Do the people complain? Do they know what they have to do? So it's a lot of try and error. So you change a small thing in the process, and then you see, okay, is this getting better or not, and then you adapt again. So it's really hands-on and trying stuff out.
And how did the collaboration work? Because it sounds like, you'd make a change, then you'd maybe go back to customer services and try and understand, did that have the impact that you thought it would have, around maybe whether customers are calling in, or, that's obviously one example. But how did you work across different functions?
That's always a challenge. I think in many grown up companies, you have this working in silos. That's a very typical thing, and it's important to get into the silos and break them up. So what we did is we didn't only focus on the operations in the logistic. We were building up a hub, basically, so where all the services were located at, and even when you were sitting in an office, you had a huge window where you could see the operations, to basically break out the silos a little bit, and to make the people get into the warehouse activity a little bit, and let them work maybe a day there to discover what it really means to be in the warehouse and to work in the process. And then after that, discuss, okay, what can we optimize? So really hands-on, bringing people on site, not being in meeting rooms all the time and talking about strategic stuff, like really hands-on. Especially when you grow, you need quick decisions, and working together with different departments, especially with the customer service and the e-commerce department. So the e-commerce leaders also had to be in the warehouse from time to time to really discover the reality.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I can imagine that, they always say, if you spend a day in someone else's shoes, you start to really understand, what that's like for them. I guess that's no different in this scenario.
No, even with the transport companies. So we were working with different transport companies. So we were visiting them and they were visiting us to really discover, what's the best solution. Because you're talking about truck schedules, how the trucks are loaded. Because you need to be able to work with how they prepare it, basically. And it's important to understand each other's workflow to optimize it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And also a really interesting example, of kind of working with, I think sometimes it's easy to think about the silos as just being within the organization or within the company, but actually you're trying to bridge then to working with third parties,
because the whole chain needs to work, right? The customer doesn't care where it stacks. In the end, it has to work.
Yeah.
And when there are different parties involved, they need to work together.
Yeah, amazing. So you referenced a change that happened at Decathlon that probably really created a lot of challenges to overcome, which was marketplaces. You talked a bit about introducing marketplace and then some of the kinds of adjustments and changes that you actually had to make to your processes. How did that change kind of come about, and what was that experience like as you kind of launched that project?
Yeah, so Marketplace was planned due to the fact that Decathlon wants to be market leader. So they needed a channel to even grow faster than they did. So they opened a marketplace, and they opened the marketplace platform. So they basically onboarded sellers to sell over the platform. And at the same time, they had the service to do the logistics for the partners. So that was basically two different modules of Marketplace. So it's easy to onboard partners when they're doing the logistics themselves. But if you do at the same time onboard partners where you do the logistics for them, it's getting quite tough in terms of all the setups in the warehouse and the data flows and so on. It's not your products anymore. It's foreign products. They don't belong to you. Who's doing the inventory, how to ingest the data, how to make sure that they get through all your automated processes. And this is not going to work from the beginning. So you need to set up manual processes again to process the orders. And this is creating, obviously frictions. So you're building up basically new setups in your optimized warehouse, but fully manual. And it's really hard to control the returns flow when you don't really have it through your optimized process. So you need to have new solutions for the returns. So we had to define a solution for this manual process for the marketplace. that was not really easy because we couldn't automate it. So we had kind of to pre-print the label, but with a normal printer, and ingest already the customer data. So we had to find a hacky way, basically. And if you onboard partners, the challenge is that you don't have any control anymore about the returns journey. So we try to make sure in the contract how the returns journey should look like. But it's really hard to check if they are really doing it unless you're doing test orders all the time. But you can ask them to add a label in the box, but you don't know if they do it. And you feel this immediately in your customer service because the customer don't care. They don't even understand the difference. And this is creating a lot of new problems for retailers when they opening up for marketplace. Because they basically need to animate their partners.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of resources. And every partner is different. So it's really a lot of work to get them all on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like a challenging transformation and kind of it's interesting that the marketplace topic continues to this day. And we'll probably talk later a little bit about marketplaces and how that feeds into the post-purchase landscape as well. Mm-hmm. So thinking about post-purchase, obviously you had some kind of experience either looking for a solution or defining a better process when you're at Decathlon. How tell us a bit about that. How did that come about, and where did you identify that need to actually focus a bit more on the post-purchase experience?
Basically, especially during the time where the company was growing so fast, we were totally focused on processes, not on experiences at all. So it was more about, getting stuff out to the customer fast. And then there was this switch a little bit towards, but there are complaints and maybe it's not optimal, and others are maybe doing this better or more efficient or more colorful or whatever. The emailing is maybe not really helpful. Did we ever thought about the emailing since the last 5 years? Maybe not. So these are I think the normal things when you grow. You need to rethink everything to make sure it's going to be a great experience for the customer. So this was kind of a little bit a switch from this process thinking to the experience thinking, but it took a long time.
Was there any one trigger moment or one moment of realization, or was it kind of like this gradual? Because obviously that process went on for quite some time. And I think it's, when you're talking about maybe not having revisited those emails, I think that's very common because these are these sort of transactional emails that accompany the processes. But what was it that caused this switch to thinking a bit about experience?
I think it was the beginning of the marketplace, because this was a new channel and another chance to grow a little bit in a different direction, to be this one-stop shopping provider.
Yeah.
And as this started, we were all trying to rethink everything, and we were actually asked to do this. But as the teams were huge, super huge, and there were so many departments, it was really hard to get more maybe into this project mode, we can say, because everyone was really focused in his position and in his job and daily business. But then we had to break up and get into a project mode.
Yeah.
And I think this was the toughest part, to get the people into the vibe of working in a project and not only in their core area with their colleagues they work with since 5 years.
Yeah, tough transition. And so did you get to that stage, and maybe how did that work? What were some of the kinds of changes and adjustments or things that you were then considering when you're able to sort of switch into project mode?
Yeah, it was tough, and I think it was working quite okay, but from my point of view, too slow. Especially for the returns part, we were really dependent on the IT in France. There was this project basically founded in France. It was a united project. We couldn't decide within Germany what should happen. So this should have been a huge project for Europe. and all the leaders from all the countries were involved. And I think I was in those meetings for 1 year, and we were trying to discuss what is needed to have a good self-built returns portal. And after 1 year, there was almost no result because, the needs were so different, and the understanding of how stuff should work out was so different that it was super hard to find the common sense and to have clear results and okay, let's do this now. And on top of that, the IT resources were very limited. So as you can imagine, a retailer, they are not a software company. So resources are really limited. They have a long pipeline of stuff, and you need to wait months for very small changes. So when you think about a new way to register returns, a returns process, it will be years to develop this.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to work with partners. That was super hard. They really want to do it themselves because they thought they can do it, and it's better when they do it. So this way of thinking was kind of blocking us in moving forward. And on top of this, the huge project with all those leaders involved without being able to have clear decisions in the end was, for me, it was frustrating, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. No, it sounds complex. Also with that addition of like whether it's kind of a head office or a distributed decision, the needs of those different teams being slightly different. Yeah, very tough.
Yeah. And the costs, in Germany, we had huge costs for returns, and other countries didn't because they had just very 1% return rate. Okay, then there's not the huge urgency. But when you have 20-30%, oh yes, you might have another urgency to get to a conclusion. And I think this was making me nervous a little bit more than others.
Yeah, I can imagine when that's a burning problem on your plate, but not necessarily on everyone else's. That's tough. So, do you remember the time that you first heard about parcelLab? Because I guess it was at some stage in this journey, and also focusing and thinking a bit more about the post-purchase that you potentially would have stumbled across parcelLab.
Yeah, I think I remember quite well the moment because, I was, as I said, I was a little frustrated about the progress. And then I was really checking for external partners and suppliers who could help in having a good solution for returns. And then I was just Googling around and checking out some pages. And then I finally booked a demo with parcelLab with 2 other colleagues. And we had a demo first intro meeting with Markus from parcelLab. So I still remember this. So he was our salesman introducing us to parcelLab. This must have been like maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, so quite a long while ago. And there we had a few discussions with him. It was not only one meeting. There were a few follow-up meetings. Yep. I remember this. And I really loved the solution, to be honest. I really loved it.
You must have loved it because fast forward a couple of years and obviously we're delighted that you're at parcelLab. So maybe if we were to then think a bit more about and talk a bit more about kind of parcelLab and what you're doing now. Obviously it's quite a big probably adjustment moving from being on the retailer side to then being on the vendor side, but maybe just to set the scene for anyone who doesn't know you, could you just share a little bit about, what's your role at parcelLab and what are some of the things that you spend your time focusing on here?
Yeah, of course. So I joined parcelLab as the head of carrier integration. So basically I'm leading the carrier team, which is responsible for integrating new carriers and maintaining carrier connections we are already having. So we are basically setting up data connections depending on the customer setup and options provided by the carrier. So either files, webhooks, API. And we are an operational team, we can say. So our priority is to serve basically all incoming requests with the best quality we can and provide our customer-facing teams with the infos they need to ensure great customer setups. And our focus is really on data quality and data freshness from the carrier because this is what we need to have happy end customers. We want to keep them up to date to be able to communicate well and efficient with whatever is needed in this moment for the end customers.
For sure.
Yeah, and our challenge maybe, because we are not only talking about 10 carriers, right? The world is huge. The network is growing, so we are currently having around 400 carriers integrated, and carriers are changing their setups. They are changing maybe their API. So we need to maintain all those integrations, and on top of that, we are having new integrations whenever it's needed for certain customers. So it's quite complex. And as we don't have the financial relationship with those carriers, we still need to find a way to work with them to consume their checkpoints. So, and that's maybe the interesting role in this area. Yeah, because we are not paying the carriers. The carriers are paid by the retailers, but still we depend on their data and also their quality and their responsiveness. So it's our job really to have good relationships and work together as partners, even without paying each other.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because earlier, when we were talking about time at Decathlon, you talked a bit about the carriers being those crucial partners. You'd actually spend time with them, maybe at their facilities, maybe they'd spend time with you. I suppose that even in this new capacity at parcelLab, with that collaboration with the carriers, obviously those same kinds of relationships and that same kind of way of working is really important. Can you just share a little bit more about your kind of philosophy in terms of collaborating with logistics providers and carriers? What is it that creates a successful relationship where a software vendor like parcelLab, the retailer and the carrier can all kind of benefit and win at the same time?
It's about understanding each other's business. So that's the first relevant thing. So you need to know what each party is basically doing, and then find a common sense what is needed to maybe improve or to set up a new project to improve or to work together. So you need to identify on which level you can work together efficiently. And to be able to do that, you really need to understand each other. And this is why I'm always approaching by just trying to understand the other parties and the other parties' needs, to identify them, and out of that come up with proposed solutions, how to tackle them, let's say like this. And this is why I said it's super relevant to maintain relationships and also to meet each other, even if it's on site at the carrier. They visit us in the office at parcelLab, or even at the retailer, to really see where the stuff is happening, how each party can participate to improve. Like, this is my approach, and it always worked out quite well. It's really focusing on the basics and the reality, being hands-on, and trying to get this partnership also on a personal level, to really knowing the people behind the email address maybe. And when you know each other, you had a coffee together or a lunch, the full relationship works smooth and everyone is more motivated to work together. That's a human approach, I would say.
Fantastic. And kind of like you shared earlier, if, from a customer perspective, the customer also doesn't really care what's happening, right? So having that level of collaboration, that ability to partner basically across the experience is really important to ultimately give a good customer experience, and the customer themselves probably don't mind, who's doing which part of that, as long as they feel that they're being, their needs are being met as well. So I suppose we need to remember that we're all on the same team to some degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, playing in a team. That's coming from the sports approach, maybe we are all in one team.
Yeah,
and fighting for the same
exactly.
goal.
Exactly. And so just, I don't know if there's anything that springs to mind, but obviously I think a lot of people, when they approach this for the first time, potentially even retailers who are looking at their post-purchase experience and this collaboration with the carriers, they might have some misconceptions or some misunderstandings around the best ways of working. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that a first timer might have when it comes to retailers, carriers, and post-purchase platforms all working together?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to rethink their role to be successful. So for example, if a transport manager in all this setup is only focused on shipping goods from A to B, it might not be the best experience for the end customer. So yeah, maybe this idea of setting yourself into the role as an experience designer to really think the whole story, the whole journey from A to Z with all parties involved, and trying to set a target for the experience, and not maybe not only for the customer, and not only for the transport manager to be super cost efficient or something like this. So trying to set individual targets, but also a common target, and try to measure this somehow to really push for this collaboration and working together. On top of that, really be hands-on. So that's always helpful. If you don't know really how the experience is, just do a test order. So you will see how you perform and be critical. Yeah. Visiting the operations at the partners to understand each other. Also from a human perspective, to kind of align to be more motivated to working together, getting into this project mode, and trying to figure out clear use cases, because it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic, and it's important to define maybe three points to optimize. Okay, so you can't change the full journey in 2 months. So really define the most important steps you want to tackle, set yourself milestones, and work towards them, to not lose the motivation. Because especially when retailers are huge, it's really hard to do drastic changes quickly. So you really need to split this up, be patient, and celebrate your successes. And from now, I can say from my point of view now, when it's not working internally, it's totally fine to look out for partners. They might be able to help, even though it's maybe another project or another party involved. They could help, even though it could be a temporary solution. So when a retailer is really focused on developing stuff themselves, that's fine. But there might be partners out there helping for this 2 years where it's needed to develop it internally. So it's okay to do this, also to learn from them. At least it's a try to do this. So really being open for this, at least, listening and trying it out. Because in the end, you need to try stuff out. Don't be shy.
Yeah. There's some great advice wrapped up in that for sure. And one of the bits that I love that you mentioned this, actually, you can always place an order. You can always try that experience to try and reframe your position. I think that's one of the things that in retail, sometimes I forget how lucky we are, particularly thinking about post-purchase. Everyone can go through that experience, and everyone, it's available to all of us. Whether we're focusing on experience or focusing on logistics, we can all become a customer and see, how does that work? How does that feel? And it's really important to kind of keep that level of empathy with your customer.
Yeah, and you can do it in your own web shop, but you can do it also in other web shops. That's super helpful to do as well. So on the one hand side, to be a customer in your own company, but also being a real customer in others, and then compare and really do returns, call the customer service, like really all those contact points you have as a customer to try to figure out what's the best experience you want to have for your customer.
Absolutely. So I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the kind of current market challenges and also trends. And one of the things that you mentioned a bit earlier on was marketplaces. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz around marketplace, also around dropship as very fast growing methods of fulfilling products or even of selling products. So what are some of the biggest challenges associated with marketplace logistics? And then also, how does that relate to the kind of the post-purchase experience as well?
So for the logistics, I think I teased this already a little bit. It's the control. Because in the moment where you onboard partners and you don't do the logistics, it's basically out of your control, and the experience starts in the ordering process. Okay, you can make this happen. But when it starts in the logistics, the packaging is maybe different. Maybe your customers are used to getting only one parcel with everything, and suddenly they are getting minimum 2 parcels because they are coming from 2 different warehouses. The communication inside the boxes may be different. Maybe you have something inside, your partner doesn't. Then how to do the return. Maybe you have it digital and your partner is doing it with a label. And that's the fun part when, imagine when one box is without a label and the other one is with a label. What do the customers do? They push everything together, stick the label on and send it to whatever address is on the label. And then you need to figure out, okay, what is inside your warehouse and what is not. You can only trigger the refund for your own goods, not for the others. So it's a long story starting there, okay? So yeah, in the moment where the order actually arrives in the logistics, the challenge starts. And even when you offer the logistics to the marketplace partners, it's another challenge to combine this with your current processes. It's a huge one, actually. I think in Decathlon, it's a 3-year project to get this together into the current projects for the machines. And all those data transfers need to be optimized. It's really tough to have this manual for 3 years. It's not really cost efficient. So starting a marketplace is a huge challenge for the logistics. It's a huge challenge for the returns process. And especially when you're having stores connected to your retail business, it's another challenge you have to think about. Because customers might go there because they found it on the webpage and they want to buy it in the store, but they can't buy it in the store because it's a marketplace product.
Yeah.
So the experience they have in the store is different as well. Before they could buy everything there, and now not. The same with returns. Before they could return everything in the store because it was only your own products, and suddenly they can't. So there's a lot of frustration for the customers when you're not aware to think about all those parties involved.
Do you think customers are starting to learn that it's not as simple as it used to be? Or do you think actually it continues to be a real challenge and actually, customers just misunderstand it? Like what journey is the customer going through here? Are we evolving as consumers to become smarter to this, or is it still
I think there are different factors. One is that retailers realized that they need to consider this, and they are trying already to make this more easy for the customer to understand. So it's really clearly written down, okay, this is marketplace, you may get 2 boxes, please take care when you return. So it's the instructions are better. The stores, they know how to handle these situations. So they may have solutions for the customer, even though they can't really do it in this moment. They cannot take it back, but they have a solution to tell what to do. The retailers are better prepared. And at the same time, marketplace is nothing new, right? So we all know that this is existing, and we may have a better understanding of this is not that easy. Then we need to follow the rules to get the refund in the end. I think it's both. Everyone learned.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so then thinking about some of the future trends and developments, if you could look into your crystal ball and forecast what's going to be happening in the future, what do you think we will be looking out for?
Yeah, we are in contact with carriers. So when we are talking about the future trends for carriers, it's about sustainability, especially about the transparency. So there are many Go Green initiatives, and carriers need to measure their CO2 emissions, and they maybe have KPIs regarding them. So that there's a huge eye basically on the sustainability topic. Then it's about digitalization and restructuring of the processes for the carriers itself, because we all expect a better service. The competition is tough, and then they need to differentiate somehow from each other, because we have a huge choice as customer, and in some web shops you can decide, do you want to have this parcel delivered from DHL, Hermes, whatever, DPD. So there's already the competition coming from the retailer when you let the customer choose. So they need to come up really with some fancy stuff, maybe applications, maybe a new service to be on top of mind of the end customers as well. On top of that, it's supplying of data. So the data needs to be fast, in a good quality, safe. Security, data security is a huge thing. Granularity of checkpoints. Maybe we all heard about live tracking. So it's super cool when you know exactly when your parcel gets delivered. Or it's also helpful when you have a delivery window. But to be able to provide this, carriers really need to step up and maintain their data, and have to do a lot basically to make this available for end customers. These are, I think, major carrier trends. On top of that, if I think about the crisis in the past years, it's a major thing to focus on stability of supply chains, even while having disruptions. And this is working better by having strategic partnerships. So maybe before we had many crises, everyone was more concentrated on their own business, trying to fight against each other. And now, carriers are more open to work in partnerships to enable the stability in supply chains. So there's a lot of stuff going on between carriers to optimize the capacity, because there's a huge price fight as well. They need to be more efficient than ever. Everyone wants short reaction times, so we want everything fast. So they need to be fast. Of course, there are challenges with transmitting data from one carrier to another and so on. But this is a trend I think we will see more often in the future, that carriers are working together, building a network, working in partnerships to enable stability during whatever is happening.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's really interesting. Well, I'll certainly be keeping a lookout to see if these predictions turn out to be true, but that's really interesting. We're quite close to the end of our time in this discussion, but just before we wrap up, I wanted to check. Some folks who are listening might actually want to get in contact. Perhaps they want to collaborate in some way. They might be from a carrier that wants to build a closer relationship, or they might simply have questions for you based on your experiences. So are you open to that? And if so, what would be the best way of somebody connecting with you?
Of course. So it's always easy via LinkedIn. So you can just type Jana Soppa, Soppa. Or if you are shy to check out LinkedIn, you can get me an email, jana.soppa@parcelLab.com. And happy to get in touch. Happy to have further discussions, insights, other opinions. Everything is welcome. Fantastic.
Well, look, Jana, thank you so much for joining us and sharing so many different nuggets of wisdom, and also sharing about your experiences on kind of both sides of the spectrum at Decathlon on the retailer side, and then also at parcelLab, and also sharing your predictions for the future. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. So thank you so much for joining. And I hope that we might even be able to get you back on for a future episode of the podcast at some stage soon.
I think I can talk about returns for days. Yeah, thanks, Angus, for giving me the opportunity to talk. Was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And to our listeners, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcasts to stay up to date on future episodes. And of course, you can visit parcelLab.com to learn more about all things post-purchase experience. But for now, thank you and goodbye.